Hey guys, I'm James Bruce from MakeUseOf.com, and in this video we're going to talk about the state of VR in 2018, what headsets are around, what you can buy, and why you might want to wait. Now this video is also intended as a bit of an update on our Vive versus Rift 2017 video. However, we are going to cover more headsets this time around, not just the Vive and the Rift. I'll talk about all of them, well, most of them on the market at the moment. Okay, so State of VR 2018, what's on the market? So first off, last year there were some major new entrants to the VR market, namely Microsoft Windows mixed reality headsets. Despite the name, they're actually just virtual reality headsets. Don't get confused about that, but they're calling them mixed reality. Now, rather than Microsoft releasing their own first-party headset, they actually just made a reference design and shipped that off to a number of other manufacturers. So you'll see anyone from Acer, Asus, HP, and Dell all have a Windows mixed reality headset that's pretty much the same as each other. Now, the only different headset there is the Samsung Odyssey, which is also a mixed reality headset, but has a significantly higher resolution than all of the other reference designs. The Windows mixed reality headsets have a marginally higher resolution than both the Vive and the Rift. Do check out my Dell Visor review for a detailed look at that particular headset. They're pretty much all the same, apart from, as I said, the Samsung Odyssey, which is again a bit higher resolution. Now, all of these devices run on Windows mixed reality platform, which at the moment is essentially a virtual reality beach house environment in which you can pin widgets to your wall and there's a virtual cinema in the basement. It's quite nice, but nothing particularly unique that you couldn't get elsewhere with Oculus or with the Vive. The marginal resolution bump on the headsets is quite nice. Now, all of those headsets do also run on Steam VR. They have access to Steam VR content, although compatibility may depend on the individual game. And at the time of recording, there's still no haptic feedback in the controllers for Steam VR games. In fact, the controllers in general are a bit rubbish. They weren't really very comfortable to use. Right now, the Oculus Rift has by far the most ergonomically comfortable controllers, the Vive in second place, and then I'd probably rank the mixed reality headsets very much in last place. However, the mixed reality headsets did bring one very cool feature to the table, and that was inside-out tracking. By this I mean that they don't actually have any tracking cameras on the outside that need to be put in the corner of your room, for example. Instead, they have two small cameras on the front of the headset itself, and these then watch your surroundings from the inside outwards in order to get your bearings and get the orientation data. It's really very clever, and it does actually work, which quite surprised me. However, the one flaw with the system is that if you bring the controllers behind your back, it'll only track using accelerometer data for a second or so before it basically loses tracking. Still, in reality, when I tried that with Rec Room, it didn't make all that much difference. It was still quite playable. Another plus point in the favour of Windows mixed reality is that right now all the non-Samsung headsets are available for around $250. But I really just can't bring myself to recommend any of the mixed reality headsets unless you're on an ultra tight budget and desperately want to get into VR. So then we get to Oculus Rift. Right now, the Oculus Rift is priced in a $400 bundle package, which includes the headset, two tracking cameras, and two of what are widely regarded as the best, most ergonomical controllers around. Now, don't expect any Oculus Rift big news in 2018. Oculus have made it quite clear that this year they're going to be concentrating on standalone headsets. More on those later. For now, I wouldn't expect another price cut or any other change to the basic Rift package. That said, I think it is the best value entry point into VR at the moment. I know the mixed reality headsets are cheaper, but ultimately they can be a bit more frustrating. Oculus out of the box is going to give you a much better experience with a whole suite of free software titles that you get with the package. That said, there are still some content considerations out there, such as Fallout VR, which is not officially supported on the Oculus Rift. Now, lots of people have got it working, but it involves some third-party hacks in order to get the controllers to be more comfortable. They're a bit fiddly otherwise. And some other Steam games won't take advantage of the Oculus SDK, the drivers that give you a sort of performance boost if your machine is struggling a bit. Of course, anything you buy on the Oculus Store is essentially going to be locked to the Oculus headset. There are a number of Steam VR headsets, Steam VR compatible headsets, and if you think you're probably going to change headset in the future or upgrade to something else in a more open system, then Oculus might not be for you. In addition, you may have some USB problems. I ended up having to buy a quite expensive USB controller card that gave me 4 extra ports, and I also bought another tracking camera to give me better tracking. Now, you might be lucky and might not need any of this at all. Your motherboard might be compatible out of the box, and you may not notice any of the tracking faults. However, if you do, you may end up spending maybe $100, $150 more on cables and controller cards. So while I think the Oculus is the best value, assuming you don't need to buy any of the extras, for the easiest and most reliable setup, particularly in very large play spaces, you're still going to be looking at the HTC Vive. The Vive is currently $600, which includes Fallout 4, which is pretty good considering I paid $60 for that alone. But the package doesn't include the deluxe audio strap, the more comfortable head strap, which includes built-in headphones. That'll be another $100 on top of the $600, so let's assume $700, for which you get everything including Fallout 4. Now at that price, I think it's pretty much restricted to arcade owners who need the uptime and reliability that it offers, or to home users with very large spaces that they want to track. Oculus isn't perfect by any means. You're still going to have to spend some extra money if you do have USB troubles. It's a bit of a lottery really, but even so, it's very hard to recommend the Vive at $700 for a comparable setup compared to the Oculus, which is nearly half the price. In terms of things that the HTC Vive has that the Oculus doesn't, it does now offer third-party tracking modules for which a couple of accessories have been released. I think there's a tennis racket and a gun, for instance. However, these are really just bits of plastic tat that you could 3D print just as easily. If you're particularly into VR chat, I've heard that you can put the additional tracking modules onto your legs and then you'll have tracked legs in the chat. But that's probably a bit of a niche user case, and remember you're going to be paying around $100 for each of those additional tracking modules. So right now I think that's still a developer thing only really. There aren't that many compelling use cases for those additional tracking modules. Lastly, of course, we have the PlayStation VR, which at the time of publishing this video is around $430 for the Skyrim bundle, or just under $800 including a PlayStation 4 if you don't already have one. Now, PlayStation VR was the top-selling VR system of last year, no doubt due to the price point and the fact that a lot of people already have a PlayStation and can't justify the expense of a good gaming PC. However, I think with the price cut, we saw a lot of PlayStation VR users who realized they really loved VR, then coming over to the Oculus platform in the Summer of Rift sale. And they're typically stunned by the difference in the performance of the tracking system. It just tracks a lot more reliably than the single LED-based camera that the PlayStation VR has. You can always tell, for instance, on Rec Room, which is, by the way, now a completely cross-platform game between Oculus Vive and PSVR. You can always tell the PSVR users because their reactions are a little bit slower, they can't turn all the way around, and generally their accuracy with the gun is not going to be as good as anyone on a PC-based headset. So if you do already have a PlayStation 4, then the PSVR is probably a good entry point for you. You do, after all, have Skyrim, an exclusive for PSVR for now, although it should be coming to PC eventually. However, if you don't already have a PlayStation, then I wouldn't suggest buying straight into the PSVR system. It's just not that cheap overall. Even if you have just a moderate gaming PC, then Oculus is going to be a great option for you at about the same price as a PSVR. To be honest, you don't need that much of a high-end gaming PC, particularly on Oculus because of their driver technology, which allows it to sort of fill in the gaps when your PC can't quite keep up. The Vive also has some form of this technology in which it fills in the gaps for lower spec machines, but it's not as good as the Oculus. If you do have a lower spec machine, you're not looking to upgrade, and you're only on a very tight budget, go for the Oculus. Finally, let's briefly mention wireless VR, because that is actually a thing nowadays. TPcast is now available to purchase for either the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive. However, it's $300 for the Vive version and $350 for the Rift version. I have no idea why it's more expensive. To be honest, I haven't tried it yet, but from reading other people's experiences, it sounds quite fiddly at the moment. Most people recommend purchasing some third-party firmware to make it function better. So wireless VR is a thing, it's just a little bit expensive and not all that good at the moment. So that's where we are at the start of 2018. My advice since the original video hasn't really changed that much. If you're on a budget, get the Oculus. You'll probably love it, but there's a small chance you may need to spend extras on USB controller cards and extensions. Or if you can afford it and have a very large play space, or are hoping to take it around to places to demo a lot, then go for the Vive. The other reason to opt for the Vive is that it's based on Steam VR, which is a lot more of an open system than Windows Mixed Reality or the Oculus Store. For a start, the Windows Store doesn't really have that many compelling games on it, and while the Oculus Store certainly has compelling content, you'll be locked into the Oculus Store, which at the moment shows no signs of letting other manufacturers' headsets onto there. Another reason to look at the Vive is that there's some potential upgrades coming this year, which we're going to talk about now. So what's coming in 2018? First and most exciting for me, I think, is the Vive Pro, a new 3K headset from HTC. Now that has 78% more pixels than the current generation Vive, more pixels even than the Samsung Odyssey, which is otherwise the highest resolution headset we have on the market at the moment. It'll have built-in headphones, so no separate audio strap purchase, and there'll be a set of stereo cameras on the front of the device, which they have actually said might be used for hand tracking, though my suspicions are that it'll probably just be used as a pass-through camera like it is on the current Vive, only in stereo, which still is a pretty amazing feature to have, but don't get your hopes up for the hand tracking stuff. Now there's no price yet or a solid release date, however they have said that it'll be priced appropriately for prosumers and business users rather than the current consumer level Vive, which does of course imply it's going to be more expensive. Now if I had to speculate, I'd say they will probably sell the Vive headset alone for $500 to $600, probably the price point of the current full Vive package, and then at a later point they'll bring in the Vive Pro full package with the new controllers and the new base stations for around $800 to $900. Purely speculation mind, and it might be cheaper if they're perhaps planning to adjust the original Vive package to match, say, the price of the Oculus Rift, though everything they've done so far indicates they probably won't. They are very much aiming for the business end, the arcades, that sort of thing where reliability is much more of a concern. As for the release date, I think they've said Q2, but that's still anywhere from April to June, so who knows. And that'll be for the headset alone, which you can upgrade into an existing Vive setup. The full Vive Pro package will then be available later in the year if you'd rather get the whole new setup, including the new controllers and the new base stations. Given that April 1st was the release date of the original Vive, I think it's quite likely we might see an April 1st release date, or at least announcement, pre-orders for the Vive Pro. Now, one thing to bear in mind if you're thinking about this is that the Vive Pro headset will be compatible with older generation base stations. So you will be able to take your new Vive Pro headset and put it into your original Vive setup. However, if you get the Vive Pro full setup later, the original components, the original headset and controllers won't be compatible with version 2 of the base stations. Now this doesn't sound like a huge issue, but if for instance your Vive Pro bundle, one of the controllers broke, you wouldn't be able to pick up an old controller on eBay and use that. It wouldn't be compatible. So just something to bear in mind. Personally, I will absolutely be buying a Vive Pro headset when it's announced. I can't wait for that. On the other hand, the new base stations are said to be compatible with multiple units, so you'll be able to chain them together in a larger warehouse scale setup. So if you have a super large tracking area, massive garage that you want to start playing in, maybe wait for the full Vive Pro bundle. And while we're on the topic of Vive, we also know that Intel has a WiGig based wireless VR solution coming out Q3 this year for Vive and Vive Pro. Again, no word on pricing. I don't think it'll be that much cheaper than the current TPCast solutions, but hopefully from Intel it'll be a bit more reliable and easier to set up. Also, we may see the fabled Knuckles controllers from Valve. Now, these were sent to developers at the tail end of 2017. However, there's been no further news on them, no pricing, no release dates. What we do know is that the Knuckles controllers absolutely will not be included in the new Vive Pro full package even. When I say the Vive Pro comes with new controllers, it's just a new version of the existing Vive ones. Now, probably Valve is expecting to sell them directly to consumers, kind of how it does with its Steam controller. So again, more of the modular upgrade sort of pricing. And we should see those sometime this year. Perhaps they're waiting on development of a game that goes nicely with it. Oculus announced the Oculus Go, a low-cost, portable, all-in-one standalone VR headset similar in quality to a Gear VR, just in a single all-in-one package that you don't need to slot your phone into. This is expected to be around $200 when it launches later this year. It might be a good option for virtual cinema applications, for example, but otherwise the mobile VR space is generally not very good at all. Oculus also demoed their Santa Cruz prototype last year. Another standalone headset with full 6 degrees of freedom tracking using the same sort of inside-out tracking system that Windows Mixed Reality uses. Now this is expected to be a much higher end headset, a sort of mini PC built in, which should be able to run some of the more top-end games on the Oculus Store like Superhot. I would expect that one to be quite pricey because it's basically a mini computer built in, obviously, but we don't have a release date or any other kind of pricing information yet, so that may not even be coming out in 2018. Finally, the Pimax 8K, which runs on Steam VR and will be available again as a sort of modular upgrade, if you like, to your current Vive package, should be shipping out to backers and then available more widely to the public. Now the name is a bit dodgy, it's not really an 8K headset. However, it is one to definitely look out for with a massive 200 degrees horizontal field of view. Now the current headsets are about 110 degrees. Now they've done this with a very cool sort of hybrid lens system, and a lot of people who have tried it are reporting that it is definitely a game changer. Now personally, I have my doubts. I did get to review the Pimax 4K headset, the last generation, and it wasn't all that good. The resolution wasn't bad, but it was quite dark of a screen. The refresh rate was pretty terrible, and it was quite laggy overall. It did have its uses, but really I wasn't impressed, and unless they seriously up their game for the Pimax 8K, I can't see it being that compelling, really. From people who have tried the headset, it does still have some dodgy bits to it. But anyway, wait until one comes out, maybe let us review it first, and then we'll let you know the lowdown on whether it really is good or not. To be honest, I'm not sure how a smaller, less experienced Chinese company could come up with a fundamentally that much better product than something Valve with HTC or Oculus have been able to put out so far. It just seems unlikely, so I'll stay skeptical until we actually see the final device. So that's what's coming this year, and to summarize, best budget option at the moment, I would say Oculus Rift, but only if your play space is sort of medium to small size, nothing very large, say over 3 meters squared, and assuming you have enough USB bandwidth for the cameras and the headsets. Otherwise you may need to purchase additional controller cards, and that's not really something you can test beforehand unless you have a friend who can come round and lend you their Oculus for the day or something. Highest resolution of the current crop of available headsets is the Samsung Odyssey on Windows Mixed Reality, though the whole Windows Mixed Reality ecosystem is not that great and the controllers are equally terrible. But purely in terms of resolution, that is the current highest resolution you'll get. Most reliable, best overall tracking volume and a modular upgrade system is the HTC Vive. And if you think the current crop of headsets are just too low resolution overall, too blurry, then wait for the Vive Pro full package. That might finally be the one to actually impress you. That's all from me. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, show your appreciation by hitting like, and if you didn't, come down and let's talk about it in the comments. What is it you disagree with, or do you just generally not like my face? If you haven't already, do hit subscribe, as well as the occasional VR related video. We also do twice a week gadget reviews and giveaways, as well as Windows tips, DIY tech tutorials, and all the good stuff. Thanks for watching, and until next time.